The first time I laid eyes on Daniel Hawthorne, he seemed like he belonged to a different world entirely. We must have been around 10 years old, trailing behind our parents at the annual summer fair in our small town. My mother and I wandered between colorful stalls, marveling at handmade crafts and nibbling on snow cones we could barely afford. In contrast, Daniel's family walked by in clothes pressed so perfectly, it was as if they'd stepped out of a magazine. Even then, the Hawthorne name radiated wealth and influence. Later that year, my mother found part-time work cleaning large estates, hoping to make ends meet. One afternoon, not wanting me alone at home, she took me along. The house we visited turned out to be the Hawthornes' mansion. While my mother dusted and polished, I wandered timidly down a hall lined with oil paintings and plush carpets. I was trying to read the titles on leather-bound books peeking out from a nearby shelf when I heard a sharp voice behind me. "Who let you in here?" I turned to see Mr. Hawthorne himself, tall and imposing, looking at me like I was trespassing. My voice caught in my throat. I'm waiting for my mother, sir," I managed. Mrs. Hawthorne appeared behind him, her perfect coiffure and string of pearls the very picture of high society. With one elegant glance, she dismissed me as someone beneath their notice. "Please keep an eye on your child," she told my mother, who had hurried in, mortified and apologizing profusely. That day taught me two harsh lessons. There was a world where money and power ruled, and people like us weren't meant to belong in it. Yet I still couldn't forget Daniel, peering around a corner, looking curious in a boyish way that hinted he might be kinder than his parents. But neither of us spoke, and after that, our paths rarely crossed. Fast forward more than a decade, and I was 22, juggling two part-time jobs. Evenings in a small, independent bookstore, mornings and afternoons in a cafe, desperate to help my mother pay rent. One chilly fall night, as I was about to lock up the bookstore, the doorbell jangled, making me think of a last-minute shopper. Instead, Daniel Hawthorne stepped in, looking far more self-assured than the boy I remembered. "Cassandra?" he asked, his tone a mixture of curiosity and warmth. "It's been a long time. You probably don't remember me." Surprised he recalled my name, I nodded slowly. "Daniel Hawthorne, right? From—" He smiled. "Yes, I recognized you through the window and wanted to say hello." A hint of hesitation crossed his face. "Are you hungry? Maybe we could grab a bite or a coffee?" Memories of his parents' chilly welcome all those years ago flashed through my mind, but he seemed genuine and relaxed. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We ended up in a cozy late-night cafe, sipping dark roast while sharing abbreviated life stories. He asked about my mother, about the bookstore, about the rigors of juggling two jobs. I sensed genuine interest, but it was tempered by something I couldn't quite name. There were flickers of calculation, which made me wonder if Daniel was just very focused, or if he had an agenda he wasn't sharing. In the following weeks, he kept showing up at the end of my shift, whisking me away for dinner or for walks by the river. Though I tried to stay guarded, I found myself charmed by his easy sense of humor and how he made me feel seen in a way few others ever had. Any lingering doubts I had about the Hawthorne family were set aside by his attentiveness. Our relationship progressed quickly. Daniel introduced me to upscale restaurants and took me to art exhibits. Occasionally, he also brought me to events where people dressed in designer clothes and casually referenced international travel. At one such black-tie charity gala, a glittering event with chandeliers and champagne, I noticed the sidelong glances thrown our way by members of his social circle. Some of them asked invasive questions about my background, while others seemed politely curious yet distant. One older socialite teased Daniel, "So is this your fiancé, or just a passing fancy?" The remark, said in a joking tone, still left me feeling like I had no right to be there. Driving home, I asked Daniel why his friends seemed skeptical. His hands gripped the steering wheel. "The Hawthornes have a certain reputation. Mom's very particular about who gets close to the family. Don't let them get in your head," he added gently, placing his free hand over mine. "If anything, I'm lucky to have you." I tried to accept his reassurance, pushing aside the hollow feeling the evening had left in me. But under the surface, quiet alarm bells were beginning to ring. One evening in early winter, after an enchanting walk in a frost-kissed park, Daniel stopped beneath a glowing street lamp and turned me to face him. "Cassandra," he began, voice a bit unsteady, "from the moment we reconnected, you've been the one bright spot in my life. Will you marry me?" My heart felt like it might burst. For a split second I hesitated, hearing echoes of all the warnings about the hawthorns in the back of my mind. But the way he gazed at me, so intensely, as though I were the only person in the world, pushed those doubts aside. "Yes," I whispered, tears in my eyes. "Yes, I'll marry you." The ring he offered sparkled under the street lamp, and I told myself this was just my happy ending. Finally, something for me to hold on to. In the days that followed, word spread quickly. Everyone in my modest circle was shocked at my fairy tale romance, while many in Daniel's sphere seemed equally stunned, though with far less enthusiasm. I'd braced myself for meeting his parents, recalling how Mrs. Hawthorne had once dismissed me like a stray cat in her hallway. But surprisingly, she greeted me with an effusive warmth that felt almost too good to be true. "We're delighted to have you in the family," she said, giving me an air kiss on each cheek. "You must let me help with the wedding. It will be the event of the season." While I smiled and thanked her, the back of my neck prickled. Her tone was gracious, but I sensed something coiled beneath that politeness, an unspoken message that I was being judged. Still, I pressed on, grateful that she wasn't outright rejecting me. If only I had trusted my instincts more. In the midst of dress fittings and venue tours, I received a late-night call from a number I didn't recognize. "Cassandra, dear, this is Aunt Beatrice, Daniel's aunt," said a strained voice on the other end. "We met at the engagement party. I know this is sudden, but I need to warn you about something." My grip on the phone tightened. "Warn me? Is something wrong?" She hesitated. "I've uncovered certain truths about how my sister-in-law, Daniel's mother, manages family affairs. Trust me, it affects you. Please come see me, and tell no one about this conversation, especially Daniel." Her urgency sent cold dread slithering through me. I promised to visit her the next day at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. That night, I barely slept, imagining what bombshell Aunt Beatrice might drop. Criminal activity, skeletons in the family closet, or a direct threat to me. In the morning, Daniel left early for a Hawthorne Corporation board meeting. Seeing my chance, I slipped away unnoticed, heading toward my rendezvous with Aunt Beatrice. But fate had other plans. I parked my aging sedan a few blocks from the cafe. There, on a dim side street, a dark SUV lurched to a sudden stop. Before I could even process what was happening, two masked figures jumped out, seized me, and dragged me into the vehicle. My scream died under the rough press of a gloved hand over my mouth. My phone dropped, clattering onto the pavement and vanishing from sight. My heart pounded as the SUV tore away, tires screeching on the asphalt. Terror pulsed through my veins. Was this a random kidnapping or something orchestrated by the Hawthorns? My mind flitted to Daniel. Could he be part of this? Or was this his mother's doing? It seemed too coincidental to be a simple mugging, especially after Aunt Beatrice's cryptic warning. For what felt like hours, we sped along highways and back roads until the SUV finally screeched to a halt near an abandoned warehouse. The kidnappers marched me inside, where the smell of damp concrete and rust made my stomach churn. They shoved me onto a dirty chair and bound my wrists. My heart hammered so loudly, I half expected it to echo off the walls. Time blurred into an agonizing stretch of fear. Eventually, I heard voices outside the makeshift holding room. One sounded guarded, the other more agitated. "She's not gonna talk, right? I mean, the boss said she'd pay us plenty after we scare her off." "As long as Mrs. Hawthorne keeps her word. She's the one who ordered this, not the son." My blood ran cold. My future mother-in-law was behind the kidnapping. Anger and shock warred within me. Why would she go to such lengths? Then I recalled the subtle hostility behind her perfect manners. She must have believed she had no other option. First social pressure, then quiet manipulation. And when neither worked, she escalated to something unthinkable. Perhaps kidnapping me was her way of making sure I never became part of their family. A part of me wondered if Daniel had known. He had always seemed torn between his love for me and his loyalty to his mother. Had she played on that, whispering doubts into his ear? Had he looked the other way, or had he truly been as blindsided as I was? I lost track of time, dizzy from hunger and fear. Then the metallic clank of the warehouse door signaled someone's arrival. 2 kidnappers rushed in, glancing at me with cold indifference. "We're moving her," one muttered. They cut the ropes binding me to the chair, but left my wrists tied, forcing me to stumble along. Night had fallen by then. Outside, the moon offered faint illumination over a cracked parking lot. They corralled me toward a different car, but before we could reach it, a flash of headlights swept across us. Sirens wailed, slicing through the dark like a jolt of electricity. Police cruisers roared into the lot from multiple directions, lights painting the scene in frantic red and blue. Officers with guns drawn jumped out, shouting, "Drop your weapons, step away from her." The kidnappers froze in sheer panic. One tried to bolt, but an officer tackled him to the ground. Another raised his hands. I stood trembling, wrists still bound, tears of relief and confusion burning my eyes. Within moments, police had taken the kidnappers into custody, reading them their rights. Before I could fully grasp what was happening, an officer gently helped me into the back of a squad car. Everything whirled in a chaotic blur. Paramedics checked me for injuries, shining flashlights in my eyes and treating the rope burns on my wrists. I heard someone mention taking me to the hospital as a precaution. Everything after that was a blur. The ride there, the flashing lights, the voices around me. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed, an IV in my arm, and my wrists bandaged where rope burns had begun to blister. My head pounded with fatigue, and I felt as though I were emerging from a nightmare. As soon as I was coherent enough to speak, the police asked if I would come down to the station to provide a statement. Despite my lingering dizziness, I agreed. I had been missing for nearly 48 hours, and I was desperate to learn how they found me, who had come to my aid, and more importantly, why anyone would abduct me in the first place. At the station, a detective named Reyes escorted me into a plain interrogation room, where I sat shivering beneath harsh fluorescent lights. He offered me a bottle of water and crouched to meet my eyes. "Cassandra," he said gently, "I know you've been through a lot. We have some preliminary information about your kidnapping, but we need your help to piece it all together. We also have someone here who's been worried sick about you." Before I could ask who he meant, the door opened. Aunt Beatrice rushed in, looking distraught and relieved at the same time. "Oh, thank God," she breathed, pulling me into a cautious hug. "I've been searching for you since you didn't show up to our meeting." She glanced at the detective. "Are you certain you want me present? Cassandra, I can wait outside if you prefer." I clutched her hand, tears pricking my eyes. "Number stay. Please." Detective Reyes nodded, taking a seat across the narrow table. "Beatrice, Daniel's aunt, told us she was waiting for you at a cafe 2 days ago, but you never arrived. She suspected foul play and reached out to some of her private contacts before coming to the police. That helped us locate you faster." I turned to Aunt Beatrice, confusion swirling in my head. "How did you know? And why did you want to meet with me in the first place? You said it was urgent." Beatrice swallowed hard. I stumbled upon some unsettling information about my sister-in-law, Mrs. Iris Hawthorne." She shot an uneasy look at Detective Reyes, then back to me. "I was going to show you a small part of it, just enough to make you understand how dangerous she can be. But I suspect she found out I intended to warn you." A chill snaked down my spine. "So, you think she had me kidnapped?" "That's what we're trying to verify," the detective interrupted. "Your aunt provided us with a few leads. At first, we couldn't believe someone of Mrs. Hawthorne's status would go to such extremes, but we've already uncovered evidence suggesting that she's been monitoring your movements and Beatrice's phone calls." My hands shook. I had expected them to say it was random criminals or a botched ransom scheme. Anything but Daniel's mother. "I still don't understand," I whispered. "What would kidnapping me accomplish?" Beatrice hesitated. "If you never saw what I was going to show you, documents, recordings, then Mrs. Hawthorne might have hoped to keep you in the dark. She didn't want you learning the truth about her real nature and business dealings. She likely figured that if you were frightened or held somewhere, you'd miss our meeting. And if you were too terrified afterward, you might simply disappear from Daniel's life." The detective's gaze flicked between us. We're still piecing it together, but it seems Mrs. Hawthorne was determined to keep certain secrets hidden. She may also have wanted to buy time or ensure Cassandra stayed away from any damning evidence. My vision blurred with tears. The thought that Daniel's mother would go to such lengths to protect her own interests made me nauseous. I felt an ache in my chest, a mingling of betrayal and relief at being alive. Reyes shifted in his chair. Cassandra, we'll need a full statement from you. Details of your kidnapping, everything you remember about your captors, even snippets of conversation. It's possible the men who took you were hired specifically to prevent you from meeting with your aunt here. Aunt Beatrice squeezed my arm. Tell them everything. It's time the police know what Iris is truly capable of. Although my head throbbed, I forced myself to recount every detail. The black SUV screeching to a halt, the masked men, the hours of disorientation, the half-heard remarks from my captors. I described how they never demanded ransom or said why they were holding me, and how I overheard cryptic lines like, "She just needs to stay out of the way," and "Once she's too scared to talk, we're done." By the time I finished, Aunt Beatrice's face had gone pale. "Cassandra," she said quietly, "I'm so sorry. I never imagined Iris would go this far just to keep you from speaking to me." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Then there really is no limit to what she'll do." Detective Reyes cleared his throat. "We'll open a formal investigation into Mrs. Hawthorne's potential involvement. However, someone of her stature may already be prepared with attorneys and alibis. We'll need to build a robust case if we're going to press charges." I stared down at my bandaged wrists, a hollow ache throbbing inside. The pieces fit together. Mrs. Hawthorne had me kidnapped to stop me from learning the truth. Aunt Beatrice had crucial evidence that would expose her. And Daniel, the man I loved, was trapped somewhere in the middle, either ignorant or willfully blind. It was late afternoon by the time the police finished questioning me. Aunt Beatrice offered to drive me home, but Detective Reyes insisted I stay overnight at a friend's place or a safe house, at least until they could confirm I wouldn't be targeted again. I texted my mother, telling her only that I was all right and would explain later. My phone buzzed constantly with missed calls, from unknown numbers, friends who had seen the news, and from Daniel himself. I finally mustered the nerve to call Daniel back that evening. My hands shook as I held the phone to my ear. He picked up on the first ring, his voice breathless. "Cassandra, oh God, where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm safe," I said tersely. "I'm at a hotel under police advice." He exhaled, relief pouring into the silence. "I've been losing my mind. The police came by asking questions. Something about my mother? They wouldn't say much, but they hinted she might be involved in your kidnapping." "Cass, that's insane. She'd never..." A sharp laugh escaped my lips, equal parts disbelief and anger. "You really think she's not capable of it, Daniel? Your mother has spent months orchestrating my every move. She nearly drove me out of my mind with her meddling. And now, if what I'm hearing is correct, she had me taken so I wouldn't meet with Aunt Beatrice." "She told me you just ran off," he muttered, voice cracking. "Said you had second thoughts? That maybe you were unstable?" Hot tears blurred my vision. "Of course she did. Daniel, your mother has been lying to you. She's been lying to everyone. According to the police and Aunt Beatrice, there's enough suspicious activity to open an official investigation. Don't you see? She wanted to keep me from learning what Aunt Beatrice was about to reveal, some kind of incriminating evidence." He was silent for several moments. When he finally spoke, there was a trembling edge to his voice. I didn't know, I swear. She only told me that you were unhappy and wanted space. I didn't realize she was... God, Cassandra, what do I do?" A hollow ache spread in my chest. Part of me still loved him, still yearned for the warmth he once offered, but another part felt irreparably betrayed. How could he be this clueless? "I need time," I whispered. "Time to sort through everything that happened. The police will question you, and you need to decide which side of the truth you're on." Daniel exhaled unevenly, tears evident in his ragged breathing. "I never wanted any of this. Please, just stay safe." I ended the call, drained and hollow. Aunt Beatrice and Detective Reyes had secured me a room in a modest, out-of-the-way hotel where I tried to sleep but was haunted by nightmares of masked men and the echo of Mrs. Hawthorne's name. Outside, reporters had already picked up on the rumor that a member of the illustrious Hawthorne family was linked to a kidnapping. Flashbulbs occasionally flared through the curtained windows, and a single policeman stood guard in the hallway. As the investigation unfolded, the Hawthorne family's polished image began to crack. Mrs. Hawthorne did not appear at her usual social events. Rumors swirled. Some said she had fled the country, others claimed she was in hiding with her team of attorneys. The press hounded Daniel for answers, but he stayed uncharacteristically quiet, presumably torn between loyalty to his mother and his horror over what had happened to me. Weeks passed before any formal charges were filed. In the meantime, Aunt Beatrice shared more of what she had discovered about Mrs. Hawthorne, a pattern of threatening former employees, forging documents to secure illegal business deals, and, more recently, funneling money to private investigators to dig up dirt on me. It became clear that Mrs. Hawthorne, once the epitome of high society grace, had built her empire of social dominance on intimidation and manipulation. When the district attorney's office finally moved forward, they charged Mrs. Hawthorne with conspiracy in connection to my kidnapping and a host of related crimes. She was taken into custody, but swiftly released on bail. The media pounced on the story, turning it into a sensational scandal. "Wealthy socialite ordered son's fiancée abducted" was a headline plastered across tabloids. The pre-trial hearing took place in a stately courthouse downtown. Walking through the towering columns, I felt my stomach twist with anxiety. Aunt Beatrice clutched a folder of evidence, her features set in grim determination. We were escorted to a private waiting room for key witnesses. I was stunned to see Daniel there, pacing in agitated loops. He stopped the moment I entered. "Cassandra, I hoped you'd come. They want me to testify too, about my mother's finances and her private phone records." I swallowed a surge of conflicting emotions. "So, you're testifying for the prosecution?" A flicker of pain crossed his face. "I don't know if that's what you'd call it. The DA subpoenaed me. I can't hide anymore. I have to tell the truth, even if it destroys my mother." Aunt Beatrice stepped forward. "Daniel, I know this is hard, but Iris committed a crime. Several crimes, in fact. By testifying, you're doing the right thing." He opened his mouth as though to respond, but was interrupted by an officer calling us all into the courtroom. The hearing itself felt surreal. I sat with Aunt Beatrice near the front while Daniel took the stand first, asked to authenticate phone logs and financial statements implicating his mother. He spoke in halting phrases, betraying the emotional conflict tearing him apart. Mrs. Hawthorne, flanked by her stern-faced attorneys, glared at him with an expression of cold fury. When it was my turn, the prosecutor asked me to recount the kidnapping, what I remembered, what I had overheard, and how I came to suspect that Mrs. Hawthorne was behind it. Even though I had already given this testimony to the police, speaking it under oath in a silent courtroom felt more daunting. My voice trembled, but I forced myself to speak clearly, detailing the terror of those hours I spent in captivity. The defense tried to suggest that I was exaggerating, that perhaps I had misunderstood the kidnapper's motives. They hinted that I was seeking attention or money. Every insinuation stabbed at my composure, but Aunt Beatrice's presence reminded me I wasn't alone. She slid forward a copy of the partial evidence she'd shown the DA, financial records tied to the kidnappers. The judge allowed them into the record, despite the defense's protests. I felt a wave of grim satisfaction. Mrs. Hawthorne's plan, to scare me into staying silent, had spectacularly backfired. Her secrets were now laid bare for everyone to see. By the end of that pre-trial hearing, Mrs. Hawthorne left the courtroom with a cadre of lawyers surrounding her. The press mobbed her for a statement, but all she gave was a tight-lipped glare. Rumors circulated that she would soon strike a plea deal, or attempt to blame it all on rogue associates. Whatever the outcome, the Hawthorne name was irreparably tarnished. Daniel approached me near the courthouse steps, looking pale and worn. "Cassandra," he began softly, "I know there's nothing I can say to make this right, but please believe me. I never wanted you hurt." I forced a thin smile, my heart heavy. "I do believe you, but your mother's actions nearly destroyed me. And the fact you didn't see any warning signs, it's something I can't just forget." He nodded, tears shining in his eyes. I get it. I'll just know I'm sorry. With that, he walked away into the crowd. Aunt Beatrice placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. You did well in there. She can't hide anymore. Neither can the rest of the family, I said quietly. In the months that followed, I remained in close contact with the DA's office, ready to testify if the case went to a full criminal trial. The Hawthorne family business suffered a steep drop in reputation and profits, with major investors pulling out amid the scandal. Some board members tried to oust Mrs. Hawthorne entirely, but the legal proceedings dragged on. Daniel, his relationship with his mother in tatters, resigned from any active role in the company, hoping to salvage whatever was left of his own dignity. No matter how many therapy sessions I attended, nights were still haunted by the memory of being dragged into that SUV. I would wake in cold sweats, convinced I heard masked footsteps in the hall. Yet slowly, day by day, I regained a sense of normalcy. My mother was a bastion of support, and Aunt Beatrice and I grew closer, bonded by our shared resolution to stand against Mrs. Hawthorne's tyranny. I eventually moved to a new, quieter part of the city, taking a position at a local publishing house. My love of books had never waned, and being immersed in manuscripts and editing tasks provided a soothing routine. I made new friends there, including Adam, a thoughtful co-worker with a subtle wit I found comforting in the midst of my lingering anxiety. He asked me out for coffee one day after work, and though I hesitated, I realized I was no longer the woman I had been, naive and eager to overlook red flags. I said yes. The outing was casual, just coffee and a long walk, but there was an easy warmth between us that felt healthy, unforced. I didn't rush into anything serious. I still had jagged emotional wounds that needed time to mend. But for the first time in a long while, I began to imagine a future not defined by the Hawthorns' hold on me. Time, as it always does, moved on. The case against Mrs. Hawthorne proceeded slowly through the courts, beset by delays and continuances. She might have escaped some charges, but the evidence of her involvement in my kidnapping, along with proof of her years of intimidation tactics, was too strong to dismiss entirely. The once proud matriarch of the Hawthorne clan now faced public disgrace and possible prison time. One brisk morning, I sat by my apartment window, sunlight pouring in. My phone buzzed with a call from Aunt Beatrice. "The hearing's been postponed again," she reported, sounding weary. "But trust me, Iris can't dodge this forever." I thanked her and set the phone down, taking a moment to reflect on how drastically my life had changed. It had been terrifying to stand up to a woman of such power and influence. Yet here I was, living independently, building a new career, and forging cautious new friendships, perhaps even the beginnings of a gentle romance. My identity was no longer entangled in the Hawthorne name. As I rose to prepare for work, I caught sight of my reflection in a mirror. I looked tired. Yes, but also resolute. I had survived betrayal, kidnapping, and heartbreak. I had faced down one of the most formidable figures in town and emerged stronger. There would be no going back to who I was before. The world felt wider, more uncertain, but also brimming with possibilities that were finally my own to explore. And so, I opened my door to the crisp air, stepping out with cautious hope. The shadows Mrs. Hawthorne had cast on my life might still flicker, but they no longer held me captive. I was free, truly free, to shape my own destiny.